Welcome to English Every Day, your daily dose of English learning, fun conversations, and practical tips to take your language skills to the next level.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Today we're going to be diving into something really fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of where technology and education and climate change solutions all kind of come together.
Wow, that's quite the intersection.
It is. We've got these two really in-depth reports. One is from Stanford, and it's focused on how technology is changing K-12 education.
Okay.
And then the other one is from Johns Hopkins, and they're really diving deep into all this cutting-edge research on climate change solutions.
That sounds fascinating.
It is, and so what we're trying to figure out in this deep dive is how are these things connected?
Right, they seem pretty different on the surface.
They do, and what can we learn from looking at them together? So
Yeah, I'm curious to see what we find.
me too. Okay, so let's jump right into that Stanford report.
Okay.
And it really kind of tackles this question of, is tech in the classroom a true revolution, or are we just kind of replicating old methods with fancy new gadgets?
Right, it's like, are we just slapping new coat of paint on the same old problems?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, and the report kind of highlights both the potential and the pitfalls.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, technology can definitely make high-quality education more accessible.
Right.
And it can lead to these really innovative new teaching methods.
Yeah.
But there's also the risk of just amplifying existing problems if we're not really careful about how we implement it.
And this is especially important now, right? Because schools are dealing with the end of that ESSER funding, the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund.
Right.
That's ending in September 2024.
Yeah, they had all this money to invest in technology during the pandemic.
Yeah, they did.
But now it's like, okay, how do we keep those investments going and actually make them work long term?
It's a big question for sure.
It is a crucial time for educators to really think critically about which technologies truly enhance learning and which ones might be more hype than substance.
Totally. And we've all seen those shiny new toys that end up gathering dust, you know?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So where does AI fit into all of this?
Right.
I mean, everyone's talking about ChatGPT these days.
Yeah, the chatbot, they can write essays and poems and even code.
It's crazy.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
It is, and I can definitely see why educators might be a little bit freaked out about the potential for cheating.
Yeah, understandably so.
But on the other hand, I've also heard a lot of teachers are excited about the possibilities,
Oh, yeah.
imagine if AI could help with things like grading or lesson planning.
Right, that would free up so much time for teachers.
Exactly.
They could focus on the human side of teaching.
Yeah.
Like mentoring students and giving them more individualized attention.
That's a good point.
That's what it's all about, right?
It is, and that actually reminds me of what Stanford professor Victor Lee said.
Oh, yeah.
He said that AI shouldn't replace teachers. It should free them to do what they do best.
I love that.
Yeah, and it brings up another really critical point. We need to teach kids about AI.
Right.
I mean, if AI is going to be such a big part of our lives, and it definitely seems like it will be, students need to understand how it works, its limitations, the ethical stuff that comes with it.
Totally. It's not just about being able to use AI. It's about understanding it.
Exactly.
And being informed users.
Yes, informed users and critical thinkers.
Absolutely.
So speaking of cool tech, the report also talks about immersive environments.
Oh, yeah. Virtual reality is definitely making its way into the classroom.
It is, and it's not just about the wow factor anymore.
No, definitely not.
I mean, think about it. Students can explore ancient Rome, dive deep into the ocean, even shrink down to the size of a cell.
It's a whole new way of experiencing the world.
It really is.
Yeah.
And what's even cooler is that students can actually create their own VR experiences now.
Really?
Yeah, using pretty simple tools.
Wow.
They can build these 360-degree scenarios and share them with others.
That's amazing.
It is. Which makes me think, imagine using VR to teach about climate change.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Students could experience the effects of melting glaciers or rising sea levels firsthand.
That would be so powerful.
It would. It's not just reading about it in a textbook.
Right.
It's about feeling it, understanding the impact on a deeper level.
That's where real learning happens.
Totally agree. Okay, now let's talk about something I think everybody loves.
Okay, what's that?
Games.
Oh, fun.
The report dives into gamification in education.
Okay.
And I have to say, I'm a little bit obsessed with this topic.
Yeah, games can be incredibly motivating
They are.
and make learning so much fun.
They can, but I know there are also some concerns.
There are definitely some valid concerns.
Like what?
Well, Dan Schwartz, the dean of the Stanford Graduate School of Education, put it really well.
Okay.
He said he worries that rewards tied to specific games might not actually translate into a wider interest in the subject itself.
I see.
It's like you can trick a kid into eating broccoli by covering it in chocolate,
Right.
but that doesn't mean they suddenly love broccoli.
That's such a good analogy. So I want to ask you, do you think games can be more than just chocolate-covered broccoli when it comes to learning?
That's a great question.
Yeah, can they actually spark real curiosity and make kids want to learn more even when they're not playing the game?
I think it really depends on how those games are designed and how they're integrated into the curriculum.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But it's definitely something educators are grappling with.
For sure. And finally, we can't forget about the big data elephant in the room.
Right.
The Stanford report points out that we're gathering tons of data on how students learn.
Oh, yeah, we are swimming in data these days.
We are, but the question is, are we using it effectively?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. We see this tension between how tech companies and educators view data.
Huh?
You know, companies are all about refining their software and algorithm.
Right, make it better, faster, stronger.
Exactly. But teachers need data that actually helps them personalize learning and support their students.
It's about making it meaningful.
It is, and there's a disconnect there.
There is.
And of course, there are huge concerns about privacy, especially with all the cyber attacks happening in schools these days.
Oh, absolutely. Protecting student data has got to be a top priority.
It does.
It's a complex issue, for sure.
It is.
But it's clear that we need to be really thoughtful about how we use technology and data in education.
Yes.
You know, what are our goals? What are the potential benefits and risks? And how can we make sure that technology is really serving students and empowering teachers?
Big questions to consider, and I think now we're ready to shift gears a little bit and dive into that Johns Hopkins report.
Okay, let's do it.
And see how technology is being used to tackle climate change head on.
This is where things get really interesting.
I think so too.
Yeah. So one of the things that really struck me in that Johns Hopkins report is this idea of refreezing glaciers.
Refreezing glacier.
Yeah.
Okay, it sounds a little bit like sci-fi to me.
It does sound like something straight out of a movie,
Yeah.
but the science behind it is actually fascinating.
Okay, but isn't that a little bit like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound? I mean, shouldn't we be focusing on, like, stopping the planet from warming in the first place?
Oh, you're absolutely right. Addressing the root causes of climate change is absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
But while we're working on that, researchers are also exploring these ways to kind of mitigate the damage that's already happening.
Okay.
You know, melting glaciers contribute to rising sea levels, which is a huge problem, but they also reduce the Earth's ability to reflect sunlight.
Oh, so it's like a double whammy.
Exactly. The less ice we have, the faster the planet warms.
Okay, but how do you even go about refreezing a glacier? I mean, that just seems like an impossible task.
Well, that's where things get really innovative.
Okay.
Researchers are looking at using something called ice nucleation proteins.
Ice nucleation proteins.
Yeah, they're these microscopic catalysts that can actually speed up the freezing process of water.
Wow.
They occur naturally in some organisms, but scientists are figuring out how to create them artificially
Okay.
and use them to accelerate the refreezing of glaciers.
So we're talking about, like, giving glaciers a boost to help them rebuild themselves.
Exactly. And AI is playing a huge role in this, too.
Of course it is.
Researchers are using it to design more effective ice nucleation proteins, predict weather patterns, and even model ice sheet behavior.
That's incredible. So we've got AI helping us refreeze glaciers. What other climate solutions are they exploring in this report?
Well, one that really caught my eye was the research on climate-driven migration.
Okay.
The report highlights how rising temperatures, droughts, changes in rainfall are already forcing people to leave their homes in places like Iraq and Mali.
It's heartbreaking to think about all the people who are being displaced and losing their homes and facing these uncertain futures.
It is a stark reminder that climate change isn't just about saving the planet. It's about saving people's lives and livelihoods.
Yeah, what can we do to help?
Well, researchers at Johns Hopkins are working on this too.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, they're developing these models that analyze climate data migration patterns and health outcomes to try to predict future population movements.
So they're trying to figure out where people are going to go.
Yeah, the idea is to enable what they call anticipatory action.
Anticipatory action, so like getting ahead of the problem.
Exactly. By understanding where people are likely to migrate due to climate change, governments and aid organizations can start planning now.
Makes sense.
They can make sure that resources and support are available in the places where people are headed instead of just reacting after a crisis has already happened.
It's about being proactive.
Right. It's about preventing suffering.
I like that a lot. So what else stood out to you in the report?
Well, The story of Dr. Chris Lemon really resonated with me.
Okay, who's Dr. Chris Lemmer?
He's an emergency medicine physician at Johns Hopkins,
Okay.
but he's become this really passionate advocate for something called planetary health.
Planetary health.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is that?
It's basically the idea that the health of our planet is directly linked to the health of its people.
Okay.
It's a pretty simple concept, but it has huge implications.
Oh, I can see that.
So Dr. Lemon argues that environmental factors should be considered just as important as family history when doctors are assessing a patient's health.
So like asking questions like, do you live near a pollution source?
Mm.
Or are you exposed to extreme heat?
Exactly.
It's an interesting perspective for sure.
It makes sense, though, right? I mean, our environment directly impacts our health.
It does.
And he believes that doctors have this really crucial role to play in advocating for environmental change.
Okay.
Just like they advise patients to quit smoking or eat healthy.
Mhm.
They should also be talking about the impact of climate change on health and encouraging people to take action.
I like that, empowering healthcare professionals to be on the front lines of climate action.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's talk about something we can all relate to: food.
Okay.
We all know that wasting food is bad, but this report really highlights the link between food waste and climate change.
It's a bigger problem than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, and I have to admit, I don't fully understand that connection.
Oh, it's all about methane.
Methane.
Yeah. When food decomposes in landfills, it releases this really potent greenhouse gas into the atmosphere, and that contributes to global warming. Plus, think about all the resources that go into producing food that just ends up in the trash.
Yeah, the water, the energy, the labor.
Exactly. It's a massive waste on so many levels.
So what can we do about it? Are there any solutions being explored?
Absolutely.
Right.
Researchers are looking at systemic solutions, like encouraging schools to have share tables where students can leave unwanted food instead of throwing it away.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, they're also working with grocery stores to increase food donations to food banks and shelters.
Okay.
It's about finding ways to get food to people who need it instead of letting it rot in landfills.
It's like that old saying, waste not, want not.
Exactly. It applies to food as much as anything else.
It does. Okay, now let's shift gears a bit and talk about urban planning.
Okay.
The report argues that cities can be these major contributors to climate change, but they can also be these hubs of innovation and sustainability.
They can.
So what are some of the ideas that they're exploring to make cities more eco-friendly?
One really interesting concept is high-density mixed-use zoning.
High-density mixed-use zoning.
Yeah, imagine walkable neighborhoods where homes, offices, shops, restaurants, everything you need is all within easy reach.
So kind of like a self-contained mini-city within a city.
Exactly. And this kind of urban design reduces reliance on cars, which means fewer emissions.
Yeah.
Plus, it encourages people to walk and bike more, which is great for their health and well-being.
Yeah, for sure. And how does technology play a role in this?
Well, AI can be used to analyze, population trends, income patterns, consumer behavior, to figure out the best way to design these mixed-use neighborhoods.
So it's not just about cramming a bunch of buildings together. It's about like creating spaces that actually work for people.
Exactly. It's about using data to create spaces that are functional, sustainable, and enjoyable to live in.
I like that a lot. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
What's resonating with you the most? What are some of the key takeaways that are sticking in your mind?
Well, I think what's really hitting home for me is this idea that we're not just passive bystanders in this climate crisis.
Yeah.
We all have a role to play, whether it's reducing our own carbon footprint or advocating for policy changes at a larger scale. We can't afford to wait for someone else to fix this problem.
It's up to all of us.
It is. What are your thoughts? What are some of the biggest insights that you're taking away from all of this?
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head there. It's easy to get overwhelmed by the scale of the climate crisis,
It is.
and think that our individual actions don't really matter.
Right.
But honestly, what I'm taking away from both of these reports is this sense of hope,
Yeah.
like a belief that we can actually make a difference if we all work together.
I completely agree, and we've seen some incredible examples of that innovation and collaboration in these reports, too.
We have.
It's clear that people are coming up with these really creative solutions and working across disciplines to find ways to mitigate climate change.
Yeah, so let's talk about that empowerment for a second.
Okay.
We've learned about all these amazing solutions, but how can we as individuals actually contribute to this movement? Like, where do we even start?
I think a great starting point is cultivating this mindset of lifelong learning.
Okay.
The world is constantly changing, and we need to be adaptable and open to new information.
Yeah.
And it's not just about formal education either. You know, we can learn from books, podcasts, documentaries, online courses. I mean, the possibilities are really endless these days.
They are. We live in a world where knowledge is literally at our fingertips.
It is.
But it's not just about absorbing that information either, right?
No, it's about critical thinking.
Yeah.
And applying what we learn to these real-world problems.
Exactly. And, don't underestimate the power of conversations either.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to people who have different perspectives than you, engage in respectful debates.
Right.
You'd be surprised at how much you can learn from others, even if you don't always agree with them.
Absolutely. Iron sharpens iron, right?
It does. Okay, so we've got the knowledge. Now how do we translate that learning into action?
Well, it can be as simple as making small changes in your own life, like reducing your carbon footprint, conserving water, choosing sustainable products.
Right.
Those individual actions might seem insignificant on their own, but they really do add up.
They do.
And when you combine that with collective action, that's when we see real change happening.
So we're talking about joining organizations, supporting eco-conscious businesses, advocating for policies that promote sustainability, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And don't forget about community engagement, too.
Right.
Volunteering your time, donating to causes that you care about, participating in local initiatives.
Yeah.
Those are all really powerful ways to make a difference.
It's about finding your passion and using your unique skills and talents to contribute to the solution.
I love that.
And, going back to what you said earlier about education,
Yeah.
it's also about empowering those future generations to be stewards of the planet.
Absolutely. And that starts at home,
Yeah.
Talking to your kids about climate change, encouraging their curiosity about the natural world, modeling sustainable practices in your own life.
Leading by example.
Exactly. Those are all incredibly powerful ways to shape their worldview.
It's about showing them that they have the power to make a difference, too.
Yes.
And let's not forget about advocating for climate change education in our schools, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We need to make sure that future generations understand the challenges and are equipped with the knowledge and skills to address them.
I think that's the perfect note to end on.
I do, too.
This isn't a sprint, it's a marathon.
It is.
There will be setbacks and challenges along the way.
For sure.
But we need to stay focused on that long-term goal of creating a sustainable future for all.
Absolutely. It's about perseverance, resilience, and a belief that we can create a better world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, to our listeners, we ask you to think about this.
Okay.
What role do you see yourself playing in this movement?
Right.
What skills and knowledge do you need to develop to be an effective agent of change?
Yeah.
And what actions can you take, big or small, to make a positive impact on the world around you?
That's what it's all about.
It is. We believe each of you has the power to make a difference. Stay curious, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll be back next week with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep learning and keep making a difference.